Is the word dyke offensive? I've been saying this my whole life and everyone around me did. Dyke basically means a masculine lesbian butch. Even they would call themselves that. I was talking to my cousin and said it and she told me it's a derogatory term. Is that true? Or does it depend where you're from? If from New York, she's from Maryland, by the way. Don't mean to offend anyone either. I'm genuinely asking because I'm confused. Also, why do people downvote when trying to be educated? I asked a question for a reason. Lol. IDK, why you're getting downvoted so hard in your comments op. It seems pretty clear to me that you're giving context to your experience with the word and not trying to defend its use. Asking these types of questions is a good thing and I hope you're not discouraged to continue doing so by the response to this post. It's been used as both. That's why it's best to make sure the person you're referring to actually uses those terms. It's definitely a slur. I heard it all the time when I lived in a rural, conservative area. It's a slur. Lesbians can call themselves that just like gay men can call themselves FGS. But straight people saying it about other people is a different story. It is a pejorative. It's one of those words where it's only okay for the people it describes to use. But it's weird or rude for anyone else to. It's technically a slur, but some lesbians are reclaiming it. I identify as lesbian. And the only times I've ever heard dyke are used in a negative connotation. If I heard someone call me that, I'd be pissed. IDK, how old your cousin is. But the various generations of LGBTQIA people have different feelings about these words and of course it depends on your character, your usage, etc. For example, I identify as queer, but there are older members of the community that don't like the word because it was used as a slur against them, but some younger folks see it as reclaiming the word. Dyke is much the same depending on your experience. It can be either empowering or offensive. Depends. If you're using it as a variant spelling of dyke and referring to a wall used to prevent flooding, you're probably okay. If you're using it to refer to a person, it's almost always perforative. It's a bit like spook in that respect. It's always a good idea to refer to people or groups of people by their actual descriptors instead of a colloquialism, as most colloquialisms were given by outsiders to dehumanize the group even if that group has adopted the use of the term internally. It's all about context. I call myself a dyke all the time. I have no problem with friends calling me a dyke too. If a stranger calls me a dyke, I don't mind unless they use a derogatory tone. However, not every butch or otherwise masculine person of sapphic persuasion is going to feel the same. Like, if someone grew up having that word stabbed into them like a dagger, they're probably not gonna be okay with it. I can call me that, but if you call me that, I might punch your nose. Dyke is a slur. Many lesbians, myself included, have reclaimed it though. So yes, it is an offensive word. And many people have reclaimed it and identify positively with it. I'm a dyke and I love it. But for many people it is still offensive and is still a slur. And so you shouldn't use it to describe people you don't know. Also, it doesn't mean butch masculine lesbians. It's generally an all-around slur for lesbians. I feel like this is one of those words you don't use unless you are one. I self-reference as a fag pretty flippantly. But I'm also gay. If a straight person called me a fag, I'd probably be upset. Anything can be a slur depending on the context. Words change meaning in different contexts. It depends who you are. As a straight guy, I would never use words like dyke or queer to refer to or describe people, even though some LGBT people use it for themselves. Just like, as a middle-class white person, I wouldn't use the dreaded N-word, even though black people sometimes use it. I prefer a quiet life. It can be derogatory for sure. I was called a dyke or LOT in high school by bullies. Nowadays I've decided to take it back for myself since I really do associate with it. I'll use it to describe myself to my queer friends but usually use lesbian around cishets. It is a slur that people inside the community can use. If you are not a lesbian, don't use it. Black people can say the N-word. Gay dudes can say the F-word. Lesbians can say dyke. Not complicated at all. Please don't use the word dyke. It can be considered highly offensive. Some lesbians have reclaimed the word for themselves just like some LGBT people have reclaimed the word queer or FG. However, these people are using the words for themselves and not necessarily other people. Personally, I hate the word dyke. I have had it used as a slur against me by my mom and some other people, and I can tell you it was always meant to be hurtful and discriminatory. Butch is a less harmful word you can use to describe more masc presenting lesbians. Like a lot of these things, the context and intent are everything. It's a slur that the lesbian community has taken back. Lots of bars have dyke nights that celebrate lesbians. It definitely depends on the person you talk to. IMO. Some will find it offensive, others won't. My mom used it frequently when I was growing up to describe how someone looked. She doesn't use it as much now that I'm grown and an out lesbian because she knows it always upset me. I personally don't use it and I don't like hearing it, but I can't stop anyone from using it. I believe it's one of those things where if you're not in that group and you say it, it's generally frowned upon. The wisdom is that it is a slur when used by most people. Some sapphic queer people use the word positively, typically only when it applies to themselves. But if that's not you, it's usually better not to say it. It's context dependent. I know plenty of lesbians call themselves dykes, but it's still used as a slur in some places. I remember the first time I used it, I thought it was just another word for lesbian without the slur, since that's what all my lesbian and bi friends referred to themselves with. It's like queer. If someone says I want to celebrate queer identities, or I'm pretty queer too, or what's up my fellow queers, it's not bad. But it's still used as a slur by weird, mean people who like to hurt others for no good reason. I'm a masculine lesbian and I'm married to a masculine lesbian. We both refer to one another as dykes. Only in New York is dyke not offensive. LMAO. This is seriously hilarious. Yes, it's offensive. Is the word dyke offensive? Yes. Even they would call themselves that. So, some black people use the N-word too. That doesn't mean it's not offensive when other people use it. Also, why do people downvote when trying to be educated? People have a hard time believing that you really didn't know that this word is a slur.